Emotional Alchemy. Okay, so again, I am Jordanna Eyre. I'm the founder of Spiral Leadership Academy and Spiral Growth Systems. So I teach business leaders how to activate their authentic power, driving exponential growth through a proven self awareness strategy. Now, everything in this strategy adds up to equally growing amounts of professional impact and personal fulfillment. Now, if you've seen past case studies, you may have heard of us as Modern Day Sorcerer or Sorcerer School. Okay, so yes, different name, but same amazing work, which you are going to hear about today. Now, what you're going to hear from Francesca is just one of many diverse types of case studies that you can, dive into to find out more about this work. So if you're tuning in on LinkedIn right now, specifically, you can find more case studies as well as free trainings on my website, which you'd find in my profile if you need an extra kick of inspiration. So today's story, Francesca's story, is phenomenal on so many levels. Now, I have often said this before, but maybe you've heard me say this because I do admit to being a bit of a broken record here in a good way, because it's just so crucial how important emotional alchemy is. Right? Emotional alchemy leads to not just inner, but on all levels outer success. It changes literally everything inside of and around us for the better. So, Francesca Gonzalez, who we have here today, she came to me about a year ago, just over a year ago, at a tipping point. Now, it wasn't one of those. Hers was not one of those tipping points where everything was breaking around her. Okay. She had actually done a lot of work on herself already. And she had progressed in her career enough that she had actually, when she came to me, she had just quit a previous job, knowing that she was worth so much more than what she'd been doing before. Now, Francesca is also a single mom of two. I think nod Francesca too, right? A single mom of two. She's an organizational stabilization expert and the executive director of a nonprofit that specifically addresses systemic failures that lead to eradicating the exploitation inside of what goes on in the youth and systemic brokenness of the youth that is happening today. So, like I said, Francesca's tipping point was about her knowing that so much more was possible, right? So she had gotten to a point where she was no longer willing to sacrifice herself or anything, any aspect of her livelihood to hold it together as a leader. And I mean, she didn't want to have to hold it together anymore as a leader and a parent. And maybe you can relate to that feeling that you've already done a lot of work on yourself and your career, but then you just get to that point where you're like, but no, I know there's got to be more than this. So Francesca came to me back in July of last year. And again, even though she had actually just finished working with a phenomenal coach already, she felt deep down like she was still losing sight of her like deeper identity, her core identity, which can be an exhausting cycle. She just had so much going on that the exhaustion and burnout started to eat away at her feeling of inner peace, which led to less time with her family and time to take care of herself. Right. So she came off to others actually on the outside as confident and empowered already, but deep down, she felt like she just wasn't able to find that authentic voice and sense of self. She had this knowing that she could go deeper, that she could unlock this deeper power to transform the matter of her inner and outer world. If that's something you want, put transform in the chat, please. So she joined Spiral Leadership Academy. And one of the things that I specifically do as a facilitator, in addition to teaching the systems and frameworks that you need for soul exploration, is that I also expand out energetically speaking to create a container that feels bigger and safer to go deeper into the cracks and crevices that you might have been resisting going into alone. So as Francesca, and we're bringing her on in just a moment, as she started to delve into her inner world in the program, I watched as she quickly started to go into this deeper connection with herself. Okay, she unlocked a whole new level of emotional processing, one that was such a beautiful privilege for everyone in our community to witness. This brought her into greater alignment with her purpose, her passion, and her values, and a newfound ability to balance her time between work, her kids, and her personal fulfillment. Okay, all of which are important. And she has found the time to start writing a new book. Right? This has unlocked her authentic voice. She's become less reactive. You know what? She has had so many external results. So I think I'm going to skip over telling you more and more about those. And I think we're just going to bring her on. Francesca, I am so excited to have you here. Thank you. Uh-oh, I cannot hear her. All of the technical difficulties. Thank you for bearing with us, everyone. I cannot. I hear you like echoey. All right, everybody, we're getting her here. We're getting her back again. She's coming on. We've got her, everybody. She just, we'll get her fully audio. Mm-mm. Oh, better.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hoping. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so.
Yay. Okay.
Christopher, is she loud enough? Can you hear her? All right. Let's have you keep talking, Francesca. I'm so humbled and grateful to have you here. All right. So thank you for taking your time to share this story. And I know that we have so many people who are excited to hear all that you have to say and all that you're going to unpack and tell us about today. Um, so when we first shared this event on LinkedIn, I actually had a number of people DM me and say that they were feeling disconnected to themselves as well. And I know so many others who have struggled with this, right? So if this is your story, today is going to be so impactful. So, Francesca, if we can, assuming we can hear you, can we start there? So, can you talk oh, we can hear you. Okay. So, can we talk just a bit from your perspective, now that we can hear you, about how things were when you joined the program? Like, what kind of challenges were really impacting you, your family, and your career?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And there were different factors along with, yes, I made this incredibly bold career move to, depart from an organization where I was in a sweet position and, doing really well, was feeling disconnected from my overall values in my work. And then simultaneously, I was processing a lot of dark trauma. So, a lot of childhood trauma that had come up through some incredible with the woman that I had worked with before I joined. And it was, I needed a container. I really needed a space and a community to process that, but I didn't really know how, because it was a trauma that was very repressed, very deep down in my memory. And once it came up, I noticed that it was showing up. My trauma responses, my triggers were basically as me instead of coming from my true self. Everything doing was reactionary. I was reacting to men. I was reacting to my team, to myself. I didn't allow any of time or space between my reaction and how I truly wanted to show up, and it's really affecting everything in my life. And because I have done some deep work and consider myself connected to that kind of more spiritual or energetic, side of life, I knew there had to, and when I found it was the modern day sort of, academy, I absolutely knew that was the route to go. I knew something that I already possessed, but it was so hidden and it was so, and I hadn't nurtured it or loved it enough to let it come out. And so I knew that I needed support in that process.
Okay, I have so many questions coming up, but before I ask them, I do want to check in around Francesca's audio. I know you had been having some issues on the RV Mix audio before. I don't know, Christopher, should we get her onto the additional audio source, or is her internet? But she was better on the phone before. Are you on your phone, Francesca, or are you on it regular computer now?
No, I'm on my computer.
Is it easy to get on the phone? All right, let's get you on the phone, I think.
Okay. Give me one second.
Bear with us. We're getting the audio fully dialed in. All right, so I'll go ahead and, Francesca, can you hear me? if I start to dive into the next thing I want to ask while you're doing that, or sound is very intermittent. Yeah, Kim, we had quite if you couldn't tell by my wonkiness getting rolling today too. We had so much in the setup, like everything that could go wrong did. But what we do know from that is that her phone is better. It looked like her computer was fully working. Now it looks like I've lost her fully. So, you know what I'm going to do? I am just going to go ahead and riff on. Oh, wait, no, I don't have to do that because I think we have her. Francesca, are you with us?
Okay, is it better?
Yeah, I feel like one of those like news channel, like, are you with us? Person from overseas, are you with us? Okay, so.
I mean, thank goodness for 2.5 years of the pandemic that just kind of let us normal and get comfortable with these snafus with technology.
So true. So true. And thank goodness for the multiple digital sources that you had to dial into another. Okay. So,
Yes.
Francesca, let me recap what she was saying. She was talking about the very, very deep, even she referred to it as dark trauma that was coming up. Now, I want to be really, really clear before we have her expand. Like, what I specifically want to hear, Francesca, is your experience about, like, okay, how did you know this was safe? How did you know this was what you needed specifically? However, let me preface first. We get a handful of like different people who come into Spiral Leadership Academy. There is usually this knowing. Oh, I want to ask this instead, actually. So, there is usually this knowing that you've just got to go deeper. For some people, it can be scary. Like, I don't want to go that deep because it feels dark. Or it can be like, well, I don't know what I'm in for, but it's almost like that full on uncertainty can lead them to just like really, really questioning, do I even know if it's safe for me to go in, whether it's going to be that deep or not? So for you, Francesca, how did you know two things? So how did you know that this was going to be a safe process for you and that you would be held in this container? Number one. Number two, how did you know this container even could take you deeper when you had already done so much personal growth work?
I think honestly, it was the first call that you and I had where it was like that discovery call where you explained kind of not only the learning that happened, but that alchemical kind of power shift that you are able to facilitate. And I think a lot of that was what resonated with me because I come from my Nana, who is one of my, dearest family. She's passed on, but she's still with me energetically. And she was a practitioner of metaphysics. And so I, at my core and as a child, knew and understood that things are all connected energetically and spiritually. And so when you and I had that discovery call, first talked about, what is it that I'm looking for? Why am I interested in this? And what does the process really look like? And I felt like at that moment, I knew like there was a resounding yes. And it's still scary, but it's like, how trapeze artists, when they're saying how swinging from, rope to rope, and then there's that safety net underneath if they fall. That's kind of what I felt like. I felt like even though it was going to be scary, like looking down, you don't know how far down you're going to go. I felt like there was going to be this safety net. And I think that safety net obviously was not only the container and the way that you facilitated, but that safety net ended up being myself. Like I became my own safety net, but I needed that like extra push really to jump in. And I think the way that you explained how the sessions go, and I saw myself, progressively get more and more as we continued. And I made sure that I joined all of the live sessions and that I joined all the practicums and I joined all the things that I could be more invested in time and in trust, the deeper I was able to go, the deeper I felt.
Oh God, I love that. I love that. I love that. It's interesting, Francesca. Have you ever done trapeze?
No, but I've done aerial yoga, so I kind of have that.
So you get it.
Yeah.
It's like, because it's literally reminding me, So I started taking trapeze classes at literally, it was like my, like just after my 40th birthday. And there's this thing that psychologically happens with the body on or around your 40th birthday, where it's like this part of you that used to be fearless starts to go, but what if a bone breaks? And it's super unconscious, right? Super unconscious. And I remember standing on the top of the trapeze, like the jump off point, my body wanting to tell me it wasn't safe. And then looking down at my body and being like, okay, not only is there a net, but this body knows how to catch me. And I feel like that's literally like, literally on like a cellular response level, what you were experiencing. So I just absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to dig again, totally way more into the specific details. And I know that we've got so many amazing people here with us right now that are also probably very eager to dig into the nitty gritty details. But I, of course, just wanted to mention that obviously we're here talking about Spiral Leadership Academy. And of course, Francesca is a part of that. But if you are at a place where you're like, okay, this is something that I want to do, I already know I'm ready to go into this deeper place of infinite power and wisdom inside of me, or maybe you've got barriers to break through on the inside or in your business. Maybe you're just ready for a next level in your career or fuller life. If any of that's you, then I'm going to put this up on the screen. I think we're going to put this up on the screen, a link where you can book a discovery call to speak with us, and we'll be able to help you decide if it's the next best step for you, or if not, what will help you the most. So I think it's up on the screen, but just in case, it's spiralgrowthsystems.com/spiral strategy call. And we're also going to put that link in the chat if at any point you want to book a call. All right. Now, again, I want to dig into how you are doing it specifically, Francesca, because I know that's one of the big question marks for people here. So let's dig into the tactics. I do have a few other questions because I'm sure that they're coming up for people watching right now before we get into those. But first, let's talk about how Francesca was able to use emotional alchemy specifically to come home to herself and create a feeling of really knowing herself. So first, we're going to talk about that. Then the second piece we're going to dig into together is using the big internal shifts Francesca's experienced to improve her experience in leadership and career. And then the third piece is how she was able to use emotional alchemy to improve her parenting and what that has actually literally changed for her children as well. So without them doing the work, through her doing the work. So I know this last piece is really interesting because it'll give everyone a perspective of how DNA level transformation changes your outer world in very cool and unexpected ways. So if you're excited to hear about all those pieces we're about to dive into, you can put alchemy in the chat right now. We're going to dig into all of them in just a second. But again, first I want to mention, I hope you picked up on this and how clear, Francesca, you obviously were that you had to come first in this process, right? And I always say that no matter what you need to stabilize on the outside, when you stabilize what's on the inside, like your thoughts, your feelings, especially your inner wisdom, when you learn how to let your inner compass lead the way, it will stabilize everything you thought you had to do to fix what's on your outside world too, right? I mean, reflecting on your journey, Francesca, specifically when we first met, you had just quit your job. And it would have been really, really easy for you to say no to your career, or say no that your career had to come first. Oh no, I just quit my job. I got to stabilize my career first. But there was like this knowing that you had to come first. So I just wanted to mention that first and foremost for anyone who needed that light bulb moment. And if you did just have a light bulb moment, please feel free to share it in the chat. So back to you, Francesca. So my question for you is specifically in regard to what you shared with me actually recently in an email. There was this piece that stood out. You said, the container deepened my understanding of what it means to come home to the self. I want you all to really feel that because Francesca has landed there. Okay, to come home to the self through the power of alchemy. Now, we'll get into alchemy and your experience there soon. But first, I would love to hear about your experience coming home to yourself. Specifically, what does it feel like now that you have come home to yourself? And if it's not too much to add, what was the big aha moment or shift when you realized what it really is to come home to yourself?
Yeah, no, it's been such a journey and a goal for me to come home to self. And I knew that And I was actually reflecting back in the academy on all of the intentions, saw how every single time I named that helping me by my coming home to self. And what that means for me is that my entire, given the trauma versus, how I walked through this world, I was constantly seeking wholeness through others. I was constantly seeking fulfillment, something external, instead of looking in and realizing that I am connected to all things in this world, and that source energy, source light is what I need to be home to. That's what I need. I needed to looking so external and start looking internally. And the more internal and the deeper we went, and of course, like through that emotional alchemy of like really burrowing into body, that was, I think, a really big moment for me when we did those sessions where we went really deep. We went into specific body parts and we just kept going deeper and deeper. And I realized very quickly how disconnected I was, like my body, mind, and spirit. And so coming home, that I am reconnected, body, mind, and spirit. I am no longer external validation. I'm no longer external approval. I'm no longer seeking external fulfillment, that I'm able to look internally so confidently and so unapologetically myself, able to fulfill my identity in ways that I had put in a box for years because I was so afraid of how I would be viewed in this world. And so I'm standing here very loud, very proud, very queer, very open, very just like, this is me. And kind of, those that are going to accept that, attracted to that, will magnetically come to my feet. That won't, that's okay. They can at an arm's distance, and I'm no longer sitting in my head worrying about what people think or what they think of me, and instead making sure that everything that I say, I do, I is aligned with my moral compass and my values, and that I can strongly say what those are. And when there's a shift and when there's not alignment, I'm able to like sit with it rather than like immediately react, which is how I know, like, dissolving some of those traumas and dissolving through those layers of where I was like just reacting, that I gave myself that gift of time and space to say, okay, I'm in misalignment. Where am I feeling it? Why am I feeling it? And then how do I want to respond to this so that it's aligned with my values?
Oh my God, so good. Okay, Francesca, wow. Wow. Now, unfortunately, I have to add to the wow that a lot of people are having trouble hearing you. Can you?
Oh
Can we get you more fully on your phone? Is that a thing we can do? I do believe, do we have
I think
your audio on your phone right now? Where do we have your audio from?
I am.
It is the
Yes,
connection.
let me.
Do you have a way to plug in your connection instead of being on Wi-Fi? So while
I do, but I have no clue where that is.
Christopher, is there a way you can get on audio with Francesca and teach her how to plug in her connection? And while I can give everybody a tip while she's doing that, is that a thing that could happen? Oh, and I just lost her screen too. All right. So while Christopher is working to get Francesca back, first I want to say thank you everyone for bearing with us. Okay, I think we're getting her back. Yay! So thank you everyone for bearing with us. It's interesting. I do want to add, there's this one interesting piece that's coming through that I'll just add, and this is kind of a cool thing to be aware of about Spiral Leadership Academy specifically. Francesca knows how to do this. And I will just invite each of you, hopefully her audio is going to be better, but whether it is or not, again, thank you for your patience and invitation. So in Spiral Leadership Academy, one of the things that we teach you how to do is to listen from your body. Okay, we humans are conditioned to listen from primarily our prefrontal cortex. Now, Prefrontal cortex is great for like certain logical things, but it is not great for really taking in especially deeper information and more heartfelt, body centered information. And so I will invite each of you to do what I can feel Francesca doing, to listen from your body. Which will, and I'm not just saying that because our audio's been wonky. I am also saying that because everything she's talking about is so profound. I think that'll help you to let it in even more. So again, if we work together, I will teach you all how to do that in many more specific ways. Okay, so in the meantime, thank you for getting yourself fully back here, Francesca. Again, so inspiring. And I know that for a lot of people, that depth of connection, it just can feel so far off, right? But it is so doable. The depth of connection that you were describing, it is so doable. You just have to have the right approach, which is such a combination of getting to know your internal systems and the structures required in your growth to crack the code of the flow that is possible. So it's like the structure and the flow, the structures to crack the code, and then getting to know the flow that is possible for your transformation. So let's dig into more of that structure and flow and how you, Francesca, were able to ignite it inside of you. So something I want to talk about specifically is during our live sessions, and I think you started to touch on this. During our live sessions, I witnessed you go so very deep. And many people either struggle to get there and like go deep at all. It feels scary. Like you mentioned, it can feel scary, or they just don't know how. Right. And so many other people can go deep, but they feel like they just can't do it on their own. Like, oh, I need a coach or a therapist or somebody else to guide me. Right. So, in your experience, Francesca, what was it like? Like, once you're in the container, starting to do our work together with the work we did, like what was it about the container and the work we did that allowed you to go so deep, okay, and what was it about the structure of our work that also supported you in sustaining that depth of growth on your own in the outside world without needing help?
Yeah. I think the way that the lessons and the live sessions, how they're structured, and the way that you were able to really explain what the purpose is and the intention, and then the pre-work that we had to do. So we're setting our own intentions. We're doing this reading. We're watching videos. We're understanding, okay, this is what we're about to learn and go deeper with. And so I think that structure works really well for me. I can do all different types of learning, but I do best by actually doing. And so when we were in those live sessions and you were explaining and kind of, I think the way that you really explained how everything is really like, it's like paradoxal, right? Like you've got like, it's two sides of the same coin. And I think for me personally, speaking from the I was constantly compartmentalizing these things. And I think what you were able to do was show the beauty of integration and the beauty of that there can be a both and it is a both and in order to recognize that you have to acknowledge it, right? You have to live in that and you have to breathe into that. And so I think every lesson really deepened my understanding that it's about integration. It is about being in the flow, being a fluid individual that can kind of shift and fold and mold and move with these different things that come up. And so that was one thing that I focused on every single lesson was, okay, how am I, compartmentalizing what's my go-to state, and then what's my preferred state. And if my preferred state is integration, if my preferred state is more flow and fluidity, then how, really kind of leaning into those pieces of our lesson. And then of course, like the guided work that we did when we went in, deep into our body, that I think was the turning point for me, where I learned how to do that on my own. I learned how to, anytime that I would feel something come up, that I would give myself that time and space to burrow into it and to really examine, what is this? Where is this? And, I can again speak only from the I, but I know that from my own personal, situation, trauma is held deep in our bodies, and especially the type of trauma that I, am healing from. And so to acknowledge that the body knows what the mind can't necessarily comprehend sometimes. And in order to connect that, that mind, body, spirit, soul, you have to dig in. And so those sessions and those spaces that you created allowed me to do that. And then I would be deep in kind of almost like a trance state, and then be able to carry that forward into whether that was that night or into the next week or throughout the week. Like, I just learned how to, instead of running away from the feeling that I was feeling in my body, to get curious with it and to lean into it and to go deeper with it. And so that, I think, is one of the biggest ways that I've been able to sustain kind of the transformation that I've felt, through the class.
Oh my God, I love all of that. I love how you led with paradox, because so many people are afraid, like, but if I go into the duality, if I go into the paradox, I won't find the oneness. And you quite literally just described that it's the opposite, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love how you described, like, okay, you would just go so deep in sessions because so many people, and by the way, I'm going to totally sidestep for a moment. Jen Eby is also one of those people. She's here with us right now. I see her in chat. Hello, Jen. Francesca, I don't think can see the chat. Jen Eby says hi. Jen is one of our other amazing Spiral Leadership Academy students. Robbie, I don't know if you're here. Robbie Crane, one of our graduates, said he would be here. I don't know, Robbie, if you've made it. Anybody else from Spiral Leadership Academy? Anyway, sidestepping back, what you were speaking about, and this is like Jen knows this, Robbie, if you're here, you know this. The transformation is so deep inside of the sessions. I always say, people come to me and they're like, but I'm a busy leader. I don't have time to do all this personal growth. I'm like, yeah, if that's your challenge, if personal growth feels like a side job, I don't want to say you're doing it wrong, because I would never use the word wrong, but I'm sorry, like, for all intents and purposes, you're not doing it as deeply as you could, right? Because what Francesca just described is like, you show up to the sessions and it's not about learning inside of our sessions. It's about the activation of what your soul remembers, as Francesca just described. You bring that back into your leadership, into your family, and it's there. You are that at that point. So, oh my God, I love that you described that. Ravi is here. Yay. Good to see you. So, we've got Ravi and Jen from SLA right now, although it was called Sorcerer School when Ravi was in it. He knows that too. Okay, so what did I want to ask next? So I want us to talk about alchemy. We've brought it up a lot, but like, what was the big shift for you? That big, like, aha moment where you started to go, oh my God, this is alchemy. And when you realized, like, especially when you realized this transformation that's happening inside of me, i.e., alchemy, has the power to create the change that you wish to see in the outside world. Like, when did those big shifts happen for you?
I mean, I think when I think of alchemy and when I think of it, in this like emotional and spiritual way, it's, we take it back to like, what is alchemy? It's the shifting of matter, right? It's the changing of matter. And if we look at that through a spiritual or emotional lens, it really is changing the emotional, for me, it was changing the emotional chemistry within my body. So the big aha was how I realized when I went deeper and when I did that deep shadow work. Like, it's dark, it's scary, it is, you're confronting things, or again, let me speak from the I was confronting things that I didn't even know I needed to, and I didn't even know that were there. And so when I did, and when I was able to dissolve those layers of trauma, dissolve those layers of that trauma response, that's when I noticed that I am able to show up more confidently. I'm able to show up more authentically. I'm able to show up more compassionately. And I'm able to show up with more fun and joy and like love in my life. Like, I have been divorced for, since 2018. I wasn't letting any love in. I was barely able to let any love out. I was constantly in conflict and friction with my children. And it was just like this constant, like, it's like everything felt transactional. Nothing felt like it was this like integrated flow of like love and joy. And my children are still young. So I wanted to be able to embrace all of that, like youth and fun. And so when I was able to shift my responses and shift literally how my body was feeling. I could feel the reaction in my body before my mind or my mouth would ever say anything. And so when my body actually started to calm itself, when I started having better sleep, when I started to not ache and pain, so much in different areas of my body, when I started to just kind of live like a little bit happier, when I just like was able to find joy in things that, I wasn't able to. I think that was the big shift for me. It was about how I was feeling, and not feeling like, oh, like how, like that, like the general question, like, how you doing today? And everyone, I'm fine. It's like, no, like, I'm great. I feel fantastic. I feel like I am on this like amazing journey of healing and recovery of my personal power. And that's the energetic shift for me. That is the, I know I belong at the table. My voice deserves to be heard. I am, again, unapologetically living myself and living my best self, out in the world. And that's not how I was before. I was faking it till I made it. I was like riddled with imposter syndrome. I was, sheepishly showing up in spaces instead of like boldly standing, saying like, I belong here. And so for me, it was about building back my confidence and building back just like that like true, honest joy, and just like loving it all. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest pieces, one of the biggest takeaways that I got from the academy was, yeah, it's going to be scary. Yeah, it's going to be dark, and yeah, it's going to, you're going into places that are unknown, but you learn how to love that. You learn how to love it all, and to really dig into those pieces and those like dark spaces. You find yourself, or at least I found myself, the ability to like honestly like kind of hug that inner child, hug that version of myself that needed the love and the attention, back when there was, abuse and trauma.
Yeah. It's really interesting too. You describe the abuse and trauma that you recall, and a lot of people don't realize that they may have had, or conditioning or belief systems, shoved down somewhere, or just trauma from being human too. And so,
Hmm.
like, what you are describing is the process. It's the process of like, whether you consciously know that you've experienced trauma, or maybe it's ancestral trauma, right? Like, I don't, do you remember Corey in the container? Corey was
Yes.
like, oh, I had a perfect childhood. Oh, but wait, I'm a black man in the United States. Oh, wait, yeah,
Hmm.
no, my ancestors. So it's like we've all, to whatever extent, just being human, right? There is trauma
Yeah.
to dissolve. And so what you were describing, it's what happens when you build that foundation inside of yourself, right? The foundation to process, the foundation to live inside of your own home. And that foundation is everything, right? Because without that foundation, I mean, if you build a house without a foundation, we know what happens, right? So,
Hmm.
no matter how deep you've already gone in your spiritual practice, your personal growth practice, we want to be sure that you've got a foundation that's like truly solid and all loving inside of you. And that is one of the first things we do in Spiral Leadership Academy. So, without that, again, without that foundation, the changes you would want to make, like whether it's transformation in your leadership, your money flow, your relationships, they would just keep wobbling, right? And you would just stay on that hamster wheel. So, just a reminder for anybody who is already excited about what you're hearing Francesca speak about, and you already know that you want those kind of internal to external, and we're getting to the external more in a second. But if you already know that you want those kind of shifts in your leadership, your business, your relationships, then again, you can always jump to booking a call straight with us, spiralgrowthsystems.com/spiral strategy call. Again, I think the link is in the chat. And we might be able to pop that up on the screen. So let's transition. I'm really, really excited to hear now about the more specific shifts, right? So you mentioned developing this ability to love it all. I want to hear specifically now, and I think a lot of people are really excited to get to this part. How were you like actively able to connect the dots at work between the trauma that was dissolving, the trauma that you were unpacking, and your leadership? And then, like, specifically, what kind of tangible, even quantifiable shifts have you experienced in your leadership development and your development of your organization?
Mhm. Well, I think again, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but so much of the way I was showing up was rooted in my trauma. It was rooted in my responses. It was rooted in this not enoughness and idea of people pleasing. And so my boundaries were really poor. I did not know how to say no, and I didn't realize that no was a complete sentence. I didn't, show up in a way that supported personal and self care before anything else. I was, working all ends of the night. I was working on the weekends. I was, I was exhausting myself, to be completely honest, and then I wasn't paying attention to what my body needed, what my children needed, what I needed overall. And so I think one of the biggest things that I worked on, and that this work helped me with, was really making clear boundaries and ensuring that I am not feeling guilt or shame around those boundaries, because I know that if I am taking care of myself and if I am modeling the way that I want this organization to be held, then that's going to be the best for everyone. And so it was kind of a more focus on what is it that I need, and then again unapologetically ask for it and do it. And I think that was a really big shift for me. There was also, especially because I had just left a previous job and I was going into this new organization, as a first year executive director. There was, this greater alignment for me of values, of purpose, of passion, and how to balance all of that while being a single mother, while, trying to, be, have a personal life. So I felt like I was focused so much on the lack of. So I kept approaching things and it's like and through the scarcity mindset of like, there is no time. I have no time. There's too much to do. I'm always feeling rushed. And really that was my internal, friction. And it's the internal kind of chaos that I wasn't paying attention to. And so the more I was able to go deeper and kind of hush that friction and hush that voice, it kind of naturally happened where it's like, no, I actually have an abundance of time. I actually have an abundance of my time here at work. I know how to manage my time better. I have an abundance of time with my children. I get better sleep. Again, it's this, like, there was an overall shift in just how I show up in the world. And so, not only did my relationships change with my children where it's more positive and they're not so transactional, even during the morning routine where everything is a transaction and we're just like trying to get out of the house on time, but to find moments of joy even in those moments. With my team, I'm able to compassionately and with confidence lead not only from my heart but from my moral compass, and ensure that everything that we do is aligned with not only my moral compass but the moral compass of our greater community, the moral compass of who we're working with my board, with my team, and that we're so aligned. And when we're not in alignment, holding that space and owning it, and especially owning it without guilt, without shame, without blame when I mess up. And to not feel like I'm such a horrible person, but to just admit, like, yeah, I'm human. I made a mistake. This is how I would like to correct it. How does that land with you? Great. Now let's move forward and let's keep doing the work. And so I think that the tangible shift there in the leadership was my confidence. It was how I was showing up, because I was, so used to showing up in this way where I was again kind of shrinking and not fully owning, my choices or my decisions, and cowering from, difficult conversations and conversations that I knew I had to have, but afraid of the outcome, and realizing that I have no control over the outcome.
But what I have full control over is how I show up in that space and how I authentically share what I'm trying to share, how I can, hold space for others, and how we can co-create, our best next move. And so I think a lot of that is, for me, that's very tangible because I knew how I was showing up in those leadership spaces prior. And, to be completely honest, I was kind of an emotional wreck. I would let my emotional triggers really lead my responses rather than, again, like stepping back and examining. And even that stepping back, it could be split seconds now. Like it used to be when I was first, learning this, that I would really have to take the time and like really, oh my gosh, I need a few minutes, or I need 30 minutes, or I need an hour. Now it's like the feeling will come up. I'm able to very quickly acknowledge it, love it, say it's, you're safe, you're here, you're the adult, you've created this amazing life. And then boom, respond in a way that is so aligned with my values and with what I'm trying to say, so that I'm not, living in this like constant cycle of a trauma response, which honestly I feel like was really how I was responding and showing up pretty much my entire life.
Isn't it amazing how much any of you who have attended the LinkedIn Live we did on Dissolve Friction, like, isn't it amazing how much the friction that we don't even know is in the way in our leadership was affecting? And then it's like you get to this, it's like the bar comes off, you reach this, and you're like, oh my God, the next level, it was always there, right? And specifically, one of the things I love, Francesca, you have told me that you have a lot of young team members. And I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of organizational leaders would say, oh, well, no, but I have all these young people, like they would use that as an excuse, right? Oh, no, but I'm leading so many young people. It takes them forever to get it, blah, blah. And they would make all these excuses about why their leadership is wobbly. But what you have just described is no, it's all in us. And when we change and transform what's going on inside of us, I have watched you, for example, I have watched you, Francesca, bring on a whole many new team members, it seems. Am I right that you've onboarded a lot of new team members
Mm-hmm.
recently? Bring on so many
Mm-hmm.
new team members, and I've watched you do it in a way that is aligned, clear in the next steps, staying on track with your purpose and the mission of the organization, as well as your deeper reason for why. So it is just so beautiful to witness. So beautiful. Now,
Yeah.
do you want to add something to that?
Well, I think just with the younger workforce, I think one thing that I really leaned into was creating a space of reciprocal learning. It's all about reciprocity. There's so much to learn from other human beings if we just allow ourselves to sit in that space of unknown and in that like gap of ambiguity. And it can be really uncomfortable for folks to let go of control of the outcome. That was absolutely a trauma response for me, is just, I need to control the outcome. And it's like, no, I don't. What I need to do is be here now, be present now, be in this moment with the other people that are in the room, and learn from them just as much as they're learning from me, and probably me learning more, because I do think that this younger generation, this younger workforce, they're going to be the change that my generation was just like hell bent on, being angry about, like all the things that we wanted to change, but we just put our head down and just like continue to do the work. And so we were like silently rioting, I feel like this younger generation is actually going to make the change that we want to see. And they're loud about it, and they are like in our faces. And I love it. And I love like just that energetic, like exchange of, really leaning into, yeah, I don't really, know maybe what they're talking about as far as like, social, whatever's like the newest thing on TikTok, but I don't need to know. Like what I need to like embrace is their excitement about it, and like how they're showing up with it, and what we can do together with it. So I think it's been really great, because I do have a team of some young, Gen Zers, and they're phenomenal. And I swear, I think I learn more from them than they learn from me. It is an absolute. I highly encourage anyone on this call that is listening, that is working with this younger generation, lean into it. and, forget what you know, and lean into what you could be learning.
Oh God, I love it. I love it. Two things I really want to point out that Francesca just said, and then we're getting into Q&A. We have one last piece before we do. Um, if you do have a question, by the way, if you do have a question, you can go ahead and start to pop your questions in now. Then we're going to get to the last piece, and then get to your questions. But I do want to point out these two pieces she just mentioned. So one thing just to reiterate. So Francesca, you just spoke to the generational gap and like how this work when you come home to yourself, that's all you actually need. The generational divides that we experience of like, oh, but no, but and I hear people come to me all the time like, oh, well, but I'm 71. I don't know how to lead a team of, 20 and 30-year-olds. And it's like, no, but your soul does. We just have to get to that place, right? So that's one.
Yep.
And two, a lot of the reason, and you didn't directly say this, but you said this, like one of the reasons why so many people are either afraid to be the change they wish to see or resistant to those being the change they wish to see is that we humans are often angry and frustrated about the change we wish to see and not having gotten to experience it. And this work dissolves that divide too, so that we just like feel the possibility and the propensity and we can come from that place. And you were such a testament to that, Francesca. So thank you for being you.
Thank you.
So again, we're going to get to Q&A shortly. Keep popping your questions in and we'll get to them. And first, before we do that, I want us, and I'm really excited to get to this last piece. And I love that you can share about this because I know you really get this deeply, Francesca. So there are so many studies. Thank God that we now have so many studies having been done about our DNA and how our ancestral trauma shows up in our children. Like, for example, there are a number of studies, and I can't remember the specific one to quote them, but I remember reading a study not long ago about a father who had literally never met his daughter. Like, she was born, she was adopted, he never actually met her. He worked inside of himself, like he did his inner work. She, who had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, literally transformed and was no longer diagnosable schizophrenic because he did his work. And again, he and his daughter had never met. So now I'm not expecting that kind of, and I know that you've had some pretty profound changes with your kids. And I remember you specifically, and I don't remember that. I'll let you share what those specifics were. I just remember that there were some moments in our work together where you would share like, oh my gosh, I wasn't even intending for this to change with my kids, but I did the work in me and it did. So can you tell us more about what happened there, how it happened, and like what were the specific changes you have witnessed inside of your children without having to actively try to do anything to change or for them to change?
Yeah. Um, it's such a great question, and it's still work that I'm doing, because intergenerational trauma and that connection to our children and to our ancestors and to those that haven't even been born yet. It's real. It's very strong. It's very real. And I remember the session that we were in where I had an aha moment around what cycle of intergenerational trauma I is my purpose of breaking. And that was the feeling of burden, the feeling of being a burden. And without going into all of that detail, I absolutely saw in my children how I was perpetuating that not only in my parenting, but how they were walking through this world themselves and how they were showing up in spaces, specifically my daughter. And how she started to, even at the time, and she's turning 10 actually on Sunday, but she's coming into her own identity. But even at such a young age, how she was shrinking and how she was kind of walking through this world with this feeling of I am a burden and I don't belong. And so that's when I knew, like, oh, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be breaking. This is the cycle. And so in doing the work, and again in going deeper and understanding where in my maternal bloodline that shows up, and understanding those stories, and digging in, and again dissolving those layers, I started showing up differently, which then reflected into my children. And so when I show up confidently, when I show up authentically, my children are doing the exact same. They're doing it with each other. They're using words to, instead of, constantly fighting, they are using words that are safe, that are saying like, nope, I've had too much. I need you to stop, or and I'm going to walk away. So they're learning how to set their own boundaries just by witnessing how I'm doing it. And so I feel like that is that DNA shift, that like intergenerational shift of when you do the work, it absolutely reflects on your ancestors, on your current family, on your past family, on your future family. And so there's not as much friction. I mean, I said it earlier, the transactional interactions that we have aren't as chaotic. They are held in a space of love, of understanding, of, just this consideration that we are three humans sharing a space together that all want to be seen and heard, and how we honor and value that, and how we make space for that for each other, has really grown since the time that when I first started, because I think I shared multiple times in the container how hectic it was. We were just coming out of the pandemic. We were all trying to figure out, who, what, when, where, why, and it was super chaotic. And now, not to say that, yeah, we have rough mornings, but those rough mornings are always met with, at the end, they're met with kindness, they're met with love, and they're met with some compassion. And to see that not only in my daughter and how she shows up, shoulders back, head up, and with this like confidence, I'm also seeing a shift with my son, who is one of the most sensitive and loving and caring humans I have ever met, and how he is really tapping into his, natural empath self. So he's incredibly sensitive and can feel, what others are feeling. And so to honor that for him, and to honor the leader kind of outspoken advocate that my daughter is turning into. So when I step back, I'm like, wow, they're actually mirroring like the two, like the duality of me that is integrated into this like oneness, into this human, where I'm super sensitive and I feel deeply. And I am this fierce advocate and this fierce leader that like, I am the squeaky wheel. I am going to demand the change that I want to see in this world, and come hell or high water. And so to see that, and to see them both like live that out, and to do that naturally without me, shepherding it through, but for them to do that on their own, and how we now interact together it's almost like a full 180 from where we were.
Oh my God, I love it. Such a
Yeah.
testament. I know that, so much of what we've been discussing today, it's about alchemy. It's about the power that the transformation of the literal matter of our DNA transforms of the literal matter of our outer worlds, right? And like kids, I mean, how many of you that are parents out there, like, or maybe those of you that remember your parents trying to do this to you? Like, do you recall your parents trying to convince you to take this certain type of job or do this thing with your career because they thought that would keep you safe? Right? Or maybe you have experienced wanting to do that with your children. But as Francesca, as you were so accurately and just beautifully describing, it's like you don't have to go changing anything. Like the inner wisdom that's inside of you, what is meant to come out through them in their very unique and specific way, it will. It just will when that matter of the DNA transforms. Amazing. Now, I'm going to ask you one last question to sort of close us out and lead us into Q&A, Francesca. But before I do want to extend one more invitation. So if you are here with us still, I know we've got a handful of people here still with us, and you have any specific questions for Francesca before we close today about alchemy, about nonprofit leadership, or just being a bigger change in your leadership or your parenting, or any of the internal, or coming home to yourself, what that feels like, or how else she did it. If there's anything else you want to know from Francesca, please pop it in the chat so we can cover your questions before we close out. All right, so Francesca, I'm going to do a choose your own adventure. I'm going to ask, I know this is a little tricky. I'm going to ask 2 questions. I want you to answer. I mean, you could do both and or just whatever really speaks to your soul most, go ahead and close us out with this. Okay. So, either what has been the biggest surprise for you in our work together in Spiral Leadership Academy? And, or probably, what advice would you give to people who are maybe feeling ready to do this work, but maybe a little uncomfortable or like, I'm a little scared? So, what advice would you give to someone who is feeling at all intrigued or ready? And, or what was the biggest surprise for you?
I'm called to share my advice, my gift, which is I invite folks, if you at all feel like you are ready, take the jump. It's 100% worth it. We only have one life that we know of, that we are a part of, that we are in right now. And I think, we can get so caught up in this future thinking, or this past thinking. And what we really need to do is invest in the right now. And in the right now, if you are at all thinking, I should do this, I'm thinking about doing this, just get on the discovery call. It is like life changing. I had been following Jordanna for quite some time. There were several, communications back and forth, and I wasn't ready. And I remember very specifically the day I was like sitting in my car, and I was like in a Kohl's parking lot, and I was like, I'm doing this. And I emailed, and I was like, I need to do this right now. And it was because I listened to that like tiny little voice that said, you're ready, and there's someone out there that will be able to hold you through this. And and I think that that's who you are. That's your purpose. That is like why you are here on this planet and in this space right here, right now. And so my advice and my invitation is lean into that, lean into the curiosity and take the jump, make the investment in yourself. I was someone that never invested in myself. I cowered away from anything that was self-fulfilling. And when I made that investment, even when I had quit a job and I had nothing lined up, afterwards, a couple days, I mean, and literally after we had our discovery call, and I was like, yes, I'm doing it, like 3 days later, I was offered a position. I was offered the opportunity to come and do an interim executive director position, which is now my permanent career. So, like, talk about tangible results. And we hadn't even done any work. Like, it was saying yes to myself allowed so much more to come in, because I was coming from that abundance mindset rather than a scarcity mindset. And so I say, take the jump, do it. It's worth it, and lean into it. It's awkward. It can feel weird. It can feel scary. It can feel all those things, but like, you can do hard things. I can do hard things. We've all gone through hard things. And this is something that is absolutely worth it. And the like what you get back is priceless.
Wow. I didn't even know you were following me, Francesca, until you reached out. And it's such a testament to like, and this isn't me. This literally, I do not get to take ownership of this. And that's why I can say it, is that the connection I feel to my students, it's not me. It's the work. Like, it is us. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, of course, I would totally go out to dinner and like have fun with you because you're an amazing human being. And like, the connection that I felt with you the moment you reached out and came anywhere near saying yes, like, that is a testament to the people that come into this container, because there is just this inner connection that everybody who comes in, whether they're afraid of it and they're just taking the leap, or they know they're ready, it's like this work. It brings us home to ourselves. And so I get to experience that deep connection with all of my students. So if any of you are like feeling interested, but a little nervous, I got you. And the containers got you, and the work will have you, and you will come home to yourself. So, oh, so good. Now, we have had a couple of questions pop into the DMs specifically, so I do want to get to those. Before I jump to those real quick, there is a link, I believe. Yeah, it is up on the screen, I think. So spiralgrowthsystems.com/spiral strategy call. You can go there to book your call with us. Now, if you want to talk to us about specific outcomes that we might be able to help you, or that we can help you with, whether it's in leadership, parenting, just being the change that you wish to see. So if you're intrigued and want to see if we can help you, then go to that link. And then after you book your call, it's going to take you straight to a discovery form that you'll please fill that out as clearly and transparently as you can so that we really know how to best support you. Then if it turns out that we are an initial fit after that first 15-minute call, then, or if we're not a fit, we'll point you in the right direction. So we'll make use of that call to make sure you're pointed in the right direction. And if we are a fit, then we'll be able to get you set up with like understanding the framework better so that you can really have a clear picture of what I offer and the possibilities for you before you take next steps. So go there to book your call. And I am so excited to talk to you one-on-one if that's you doing so. So question wise, couple of questions in the DMs and I want to okay, yeah. So a couple of questions. Somebody says, we had somebody in the DM. I'm not going to name them since they DM'd me, so I won't name your names. But we had somebody say, what was the question? So I know I'm interested, but I don't feel like I can commit today. Should I still apply? Yes. So go ahead either way. Just book in your call, fill out the discovery form, tell us more about you and where you're at right now, and maybe why you don't even know if you're ready yet. And then we will at least be able to get on that 15-minute call together and at very, very minimum, give you some materials to work with to start off, even if you're not ready to commit yet. So if that's you, please do just, of course, go ahead and book. And then the last question I see that came in, oh, this is very apropos what Francesca just spoke to, actually. So the question is, what is a typical time frame I can expect to start seeing results? Such a good question. So Francesca mentioned coming straight into the container and bam, there were results. And I see this happen all of the freaking time. I see people who, just like Francesca, like, I don't know where my income's going to come from. And then they take the leap. It's like, well, but I have, I can put it on. And I am not big on credit card spending, but it's like when you know you need to take the leap, it will show up. And it did for Francesca. I have seen this happen or like suddenly they get a new client or whatever. I have also seen people come straight into the container and within literally the orientation process, some big, even tangible shifts. Like this might be a little scary, but it's also like exciting. I have had some students literally have what have felt like ayahuasca experiences during the orientation process. It's that profound, which is to say you will start seeing shifts right away. Or, okay, there are so that's about a third of my students. Another third, it'll take maybe the first month to start seeing tangible results. And the other third, just to answer this question fully, it takes a few months of like really rooting into yourself. And then your inner and outer will start to line up within at least minimum of 90 days. So to answer that question, there we go. So that's, again, how you know when those shifts will start to happen. So Francesca, I just can't even express the gratitude that I have for you and the gratitude I have for like your soul and your inner knowing and both what you have brought to yourself and your family through really saying yes to yourself in this work and what you are bringing to the world. So thank you. And thank you, of course, for all the time that you took out. Like you are so busy leading your team, growing your organization, parenting your children. So thank you so much for all the time that you set aside to do this with us today. I'm just so grateful. And I believe probably everybody watching is as well. So thank you. And thank you all of you who took out time from your day to show up and be here with us through this transformation story. So again, if you want to book a call, just do jump to spiralgrowthsystems.com/spiral strategy call. The link's also in the chat. Thank you, Francesca.
Thank you so much, Jordanna.
So good. All right, everybody. Thank you again. I have felt everybody's energy and I'm so grateful for all of you being here with us. And we will see you. I will at least see you on the flip side.